Out front with me now is Ron Brownstein, CNN senior political analyst and senior editor for The Atlantic. David K. Johnson, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist who has been covering Donald Trump for over 30 years, and Brittany Shepard, White House correspondent for Yahoo News. Ron, when Joe Biden says that Donald Trump is leaving landmines behind, how big could those be?
Well, look, there have been very few occasions in American history when we have changed chief executives in the middle of a full-scale national crisis. I mean, you could argue that the pandemic is the most serious national security challenge we have faced since World War II. And other than Richard Nixon succeeding Lyndon Johnson in 1968, very rarely have we changed commanders-in-chief during wartime. So it's an unusually large challenge to begin with. And then on the other side, we're seeing less cooperation, more active hostility in the transition than we have probably ever experienced in American history. Maybe Buchanan and Lincoln was comparable, leading into the Civil War. So the challenge is at the high end. The lack of cooperation, the amount of cooperation is at the low end. So you can see where this is becoming a situation that is enormously challenging, not only for Joe Biden, but for the country.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly laying that out. If he's telling that to reporters now, you know that he really has to be concerned. And that's what I wanted to ask you, Brittany, because you have been covering the Biden transition. How concerned are they really about the chaos and mess that could be left behind? Or is it just President Trump, or does that extend down through staff?
Well, Kate, there's frustration at every rung of the Biden transition right now, and they're so upset that they're not even able to be frustrated about the big things. It's the small things, too. I think Joe Biden is not a politician known to be hot under the collar, but look at his Christmas address earlier this week. It was just supposed to be an address about goodwill, saying that everyone should stay home and that he was going to get the vaccine, but it slowly became a frustrating speech about how the transition, especially the Pentagon and the Department of Defense, were not giving the transition adequate information about this huge SolarWinds cyber hack, which we know is not just a cyber issue, but can also be an issue of domestic and international terrorism. And they have to go to the press and go to the American people to point out the malfeasance that they wish that they could just keep private. And aides have been telling me that they can't even be banging the drum about this when they're banging the drum about really small, petty things coming from Trump political appointees. They're pointing mostly towards this Twitter Passover that usually happens when administrations change hands. Usually you get to keep all of the followers you gained, and now the Trump administration is saying you have to start at bullseye, you have to start at zero. And aides are kind of texting me expletive saying we can't. If this is his floor of pettiness, where is his ceiling going to be as lives are on the line and they don't really know what they can do beyond scream and yell and hope that the American people will retaliate in due time? Yeah, I mean, that is the definition of petty. I mean, David, we saw, but David, you have some more insight in this, because when it does come to Twitter followers, that is no small thing when it comes to President Trump. That's like the entire ballgame. And we saw the president today, David, golfing, but there is no reporting of him actually dealing with the crisis that he just created that will be impacting millions of Americans with this COVID relief bill. And since there is a tweet for everything, this seems a good occasion to bring one out. October 23rd, 2014, Donald Trump tweets, President Obama has a major meeting on the New York City Ebola outbreak with people flying in from all over the country, but decided to play golf. Irony is definitely completely lost on him.
Yes, and not to mention that he said if he was elected president, he would never play golf while he was in office. 3 years ago, I wrote that if a virus were to hopscotch around the planet on jetliners and cause a worldwide pandemic, Donald Trump would not know what to do. Well, we've seen exactly that. He doesn't know what to do. And he's doing here what he did when he was in financial trouble 30 years ago. When he should have been dealing with people he owed money to, Trump was sitting in his office going over swatches of cloth on what fabric to pick for one of his casinos. He's running away from responsibility because he's a con man and he does not know, Kate, what to do in a situation like this. He has absolutely no idea.
But David, this is not a casino. He knows this isn't a casino. These are millions of people's lives. He has had multiple briefings. He has pushed he's been, I mean, he knows all of this. We don't even need to go into the examples.
Correct.
This is not a casino.
Right. But he doesn't, the point is that he doesn't have any real executive skill. He's always hired people to run his businesses for him. His TV show, to anybody who understands how business works, it may have made him a hero and a star to a large audience of people who've never been in any dealings with high-level executives, but to executives, it's a ridiculous show. And he simply doesn't have the skill to assign people, to demand results, because he really doesn't know how to manage. It's all a con. His whole life has been bullying, making claims, and hiring people then to do things on his behalf.
Ron, you know, other than golf, it does seem that the other thing that the president is focused on is pardons. And at the top of his list is anyone that is wrapped up in the Russia investigation who stayed loyal to him. I want to read you something that Senator Lindsey Graham actually said to Manu Raju nearly 2 years ago about pardoning folks related to the Russia investigation. Lindsey Graham told Manu, pardoning Paul Manafort, would be seen as a political disaster for the president. There may come a day down the road after the politics have changed that you'd want to consider an application of him, like everybody else, but now would be a disaster. That day came.
Yes.
Was it a disaster for the president?
Well, you know, we're going to see, but it is a disaster for the country, I think. I mean, it is absolutely embarrassing and demeaning to America's standing in the world. I mean, we literally send people all over the globe trying to teach countries how to stand up democracies. The National Democratic Institute says it's worked in 156 countries. Now we have a president who is literally trying to tear down our own democracy, both through his attempts to subvert the election since November, these pardons for cronies and Confederates, people who've worked with him, the efforts to pressure the Justice Department into launching independent counsels against his political rivals. I mean, this is the kind of thing, Kate, that you see in a third world country when the walls are closing in on Somoza or Ceausescu or Trujillo or Noriega. I mean, this is the kind of the last, gasp, really, of a strong man who knows that the days are numbered, who is addled, who's erratic, who's vengeful, who's angry. And what is most striking to me about this is just the continued reluctance of almost all Republicans to call out what the president is doing. They have enabled him for 4 years. They have allowed him to develop the assumption that no matter how far he goes, there will not be effective sanction. And you are seeing the results of that every day. And probably we're going to see it in even more outrageous ways between now and the inauguration.
And Ron's actually getting something I'm curious about, Brittany. When it comes to, let's just say, the pardons, the president does not care about the fallout, clearly. Do the people around him care at this point?
Well, I think people around him are just kind of looking for the door. I mean, aides are privately sending their resumes around, trying to land somewhere normal. I think there's lots of worry in Washington that folks who work for Trump won't be able to have a job again. I do think it's important for us to kind of remember who Donald Trump is. He's a man whose personal orbit has gotten smaller and smaller over the years. He's someone who's very big on loyalty. Those who he thought were his friends have now sold him up the river in books. And so as he feels that he can't get a win in his mind and in his aides' minds, he's just going to help his friends out. That's why we haven't seen a Michael Cohen pardon, but we have seen a Papadopoulos and a Manafort pardon. He thinks himself a hero. He's someone who believes in these big, gregarious comic book narratives. This is a television producer, and I think those in his wake understand that, and they know if they don't want to be in the firing line, they're going to keep out.
David, last hour, it actually was raised, and it really now has me thinking the way that you've, are describing the president. He likes to be, Toulouse and David Gergen were bringing it up, that he likes to be the white knight, even if it's manufactured, right? He's the arsonist that lights the fire and then comes in and then, puts out the fire. Do you think that's what this is? Like, that when it comes even to the extent of when you're talking about millions of people's livelihoods, that really need help, and these benefits are going to be expiring right after Christmas, that he's planning some grand entrance, and he thinks he's going to get credit for it?
Yeah, Kate, I actually think one of the smarter things Donald has done politically for his own future is saying that $600 is not enough. The check should be $2,000, something he could have said a long time ago, but says now. And what does that do? Well, to people who really need $2,000,